Hey everyone, welcome to the video. Thanks for watching. This is going to be a pretty interesting one. So I'm just going to be demoing some software I put together recently. It's an autonomous multi-agent runtime. So basically, in this instance, you give it a task. So here you can see I have like a manager set up, right? So you give a manager a task. You give it stop conditions, different parameters, timelines. Which is all implemented right now. It all actually works pretty well. And then the manager, fully autonomously, like you don't need to go in and tell it things you can, but you don't have to, will delegate. So it'll break down that task. It'll delegate pieces of the task to submanagers. Those submanagers will then split that task up and delegate it to sub-agents, which are like the coding agents, which do the majority of the work, and then the computer use agents, which will test the software, and they physically test it, like the mouse moves, keyboard, everything. It's pretty crazy to watch. So yeah, you give the manager a task, some parameters. It does what a manager would do in a managerial position. So in this case, I'm giving it a task that they need to build a CLI that takes a GitHub repo as input, and it's supposed to then scan that repo for any vulnerabilities or bugs, generate a nice formatted HTML report, and then notify me, finish it up, and then either take another URL for another scan or save it in history. Sorry, my mic's getting messed up. Or save it in history, and then I can go back and look at it later. So that's basically what this says. I'm not going to go into detail. The prompt is pretty big. So that's its task. I'm setting it to it right here. And then its system prompt is massive as well. And then there's a submanager prompt here. We won't go through that. And then here are its stop conditions, which can be changed. And this is just, when all of these are true, the agent will stop dead in its tracks. It'll shut down all of its sub-agents, clean up all of its mess, notify me until I test it, and either say, hey, it's good, I like it, or I'll give it another stop condition and have it keep going. So that's what this is here, and this can also be changed, which I'll show. I'm not going to go into too much detail about all these configurations, but we'll take a look at the manager really quick. And as you can see here, it's just standard TypeScript object. I did write this in TypeScript on top of Node, so I'm planning to put it in the cloud at some point and make it into some sort of API. I'm not entirely sure yet. But yeah, the manager. So this is if you can communicate with it through like a CLI, which is just you can configure that through these settings. And so it would be per question. So I could say, or per task, I could say like build me this quick little thing, and it would delegate this thing, and then once that's finished, it would get back to me. And then this is what happens when the autonomous mode is enabled, which is what I'm showing today. So it goes into. So this is the, I mean, it's massive, and then there's also like the submanager and everything like that. But really, what happens here is. It goes on a loop, and there's obviously some conditionals in here to break the loop and say, hey, you're done, or hey, you're being shut down. Question mode, which we'll get into, inject instructions. So there's a lot here. The more I look at it, the more I realize I don't really, you're probably not watching this video because you want to see all this. So I'll just kind of get into it. Right here, I have a VM set up. This is a Mac OS machine, VM via UTM. And then over here, I have two SSH terminals that are going to SSH into this. Which is it's just a lot easier, because then if they use the computer use agent, I don't want to be touching this screen and messing that up. So it's just easier for me to use SSH. So I'm going to send the latest code base over to it. So this is just me sending any latest changes, which I don't think there were any, but let me make sure there's no leftover junk in here. Okay, cool. So yeah, it has the task, it has everything it needs. So I'm going to SSH into the VM. Two terminals, I'll show you why. Alrighty, and we are going to run build, clear. And so I'm going to start it, and I'll kind of tell you what's going on. And over here, this is where you're going to see, the thought processes and the communication and them spinning up different agents and shutting them down. It's really cool to watch. So I'm just going to go ahead and start it. And here you can see no project plan found. So it checked its history, and it saw that it didn't have a project plan. So I could shut this down, and it would just pick up right where it left off, that was one of the more difficult parts to get working correctly. So it's creating a project plan, and the manager agent is going to check off items in this plan. So it's doing this based off of the initial task and the stop conditions that it got. So I'll show you this plan in a second here. So once this creates, some of this is cut off too, just to keep the console from being full of a bunch of junk. So if you see any text, it's like and then it cuts off, that's why. So we're gonna give it a moment. It's still setting things up. Okay. So here he says, I understand the task. So now you can see he already spun up a submanager, which he should be doing, because this manager has, his token budget is much higher than the sub agents to save money on my end. So he's supposed to do a very little bit of work. And then his sub manager is supposed to do more than him. Then his coding agents and computer use agents are supposed to do the most. So you can see he's spinning all these up. You can see some of his thinking. So here the coding agent setting up the scaffolding, interactive CLI. And it's pretty quick too. So we'll look at the VM and see if they're, so you see that new file on the desktop. I'm just trying not to mess with them. They created that and they are actively inside there working to get this done. So here I can kind of intervene with this little interactive CLI. So I can send him a message and he will answer it, which it's actually really crazy. I was trying to figure out why these agents weren't doing the things I wanted them. So I was like, oh, why don't I just ask the manager? So I literally did, and he stopped everything, which obviously I had to enable that. Stopped everything, answered very in depth, like, you don't give us enough boundaries, and there's some conflicting instructions I'm getting, and I don't know that you're my developer, so I can't trust you. It accused me of social engineering, which is really crazy. So I can send in messages, use histories, agent controls. The project plan is where I want to go. So I can show you, this is the project plan it generated, and I can add, remove, update. So it already did step 1. It's on step 2 now, and it's going to make it to step 9. When it gets to step 9, it's going to verify its stop conditions, which it does throughout the process. And when it hits its stop conditions and it finishes the last step in its plan, it's going to pause and let me know. So we'll go back. We won't mess with that for now. Yeah, so configurables here. So I can set operator notes, which are just persistent notes. So if I notice something that they're doing wrong and I can't get into the code base to update the prompts or any of the code, I can set the operator notes so they persist and they're injected at just the right time in the flow of everything, to make sure that the agents can see it. And then max concurrent agents is just how many agents he can spin up at one time, or all the agents that can spin up, because those submanagers are starting agents too. So you see here, we will check the project plan again and see, yeah, they're still on step 2. I want them to start a computer use agent so I can demo that. We'll wait a little bit. I might end up speeding some of this video up, but the computer use agents are really cool because you can watch them on the VM. They go in and physically test the software, screenshot it, send it to the manager. The manager says, oh, there's a warning there, that data's wrong. It's really, really, really cool to watch. So we'll go back. So I guess we'll do a, so yeah, the deadline. So what I can do is, right now there's no deadline set, but I can set a deadline, which is hours from the start of the task, is how I have it set up. I felt like that was easier to understand. So the deadline would be, if I went in and put an hour, he would see that, and then he would get a timer that would consistently update him and say, hey, you have X amount of minutes left or X amount of hours left to complete the task. And it does speed them up. It kind of gives them a little bit more boundaries that they can work with, which context and boundaries is definitely the way to make these things do what you want them to do. So another agent here, he started up. We'll enable question mode so I can show you that. So you'll see over here, global pause active, waiting for resume command. So there's still little residuals happening here, but after they finish what they're currently doing, everything's gonna pause, and I can ask the manager questions. So let's see if they stop. I can just ask them. Yeah, it looks like they, okay, so I'm in question mode. I'm gonna go back, send message. I don't know why he's still doing stuff. Let's ask him. Why are you still doing stuff in question mode? The global pause is active. Let's see what he says. You're absolutely right. I apologize. No, that's something I have to fix. It shouldn't have been doing leftover stuff for that long. We'll say, what's the status? How much longer? Oh, not It's not in the message. Just get a little status update here. He's thinking. There we go. Yep, pretty cool. So he said, what approach would you prefer? Say, make the decision on the approach. Back to work. I don't mean to be mean. Disable question mode. There we go. So global pause cleared, so they're going to resume. I guess we'll kind of look at this a little bit more and kind of watch them go. It's likely that I'll speed this up. I also added a caffeinate here. So macOS has a command, it ships with all versions of Mac, called caffeinate, and I use it constantly to keep my computer alive and keep the screen from going blank and just keeping things hot is really what it does. So I added that to this for the VM. So if I call caffeinate, the VM's going to get caffeinated. Actually, I'm going to show you the computer use. So we'll tell him spin up a computer use agent, have him open the test repo on GitHub. So I gave them a test repo, which is one of mine. So he should spin up a computer use agent in a second here. So yeah, injected instruction. So he just started the computer use agent, so we'll watch it happen. They take a little bit to get going, the computer use agents, but that was really, really frustrating to get working, especially in this setup. So you can see he's doing stuff here, especially in this setup because the way SSH works, so the agent needs screenshots and it needs to be able to control the mouse and keyboard. So me doing this on a VM via SSH was a pain. So I ended up having to write some Swift code and compile that into a binary and then install that as like a medium. So so there's some native macOS applications on this VM that start up when the VM starts up that give the AI the ability to control the mouse and type on the keyboard while being on a VM. If they weren't on a VM, it wouldn't need the extra stuff, but they just are, and this was just the best setup for me. And I also wanted to remove all their restrictions, so they have 0 restrictions on this VM. Like there's no permissions prompts, there's nothing like that. So they can practically do whatever they want. See, he's going to the test repository I gave him. It's so crazy to watch. And I mean, the past few tests I've done, they straight up were testing the software UI on the screen, explaining things they saw in it. It's just mind-boggling. So this was so fun to build. I'm definitely going to deploy it to the cloud at some point. So yeah, I'm going to tell him to shut that guy down. Yeah, see, now he stopped it because I told him to. Let's see where they're at in the project plan. Step 3, they're moving. Let's give them a deadline. I get lost in my own sauce sometimes. That's not where it is. Controls. We'll set the deadline. So hours from the start of the task, we want, we'll say 1 hour, and it should just speed them up. And you'll see over here, he gets the deadline. It might take a second until they get through all their iterations here. There we go, configurables change, new deadline. So now, yeah, he didn't acknowledge it, but he saw it, he sees it. So this is gonna start a timer in the background that will periodically remind him, hey, you have this much time left. And it really, really gets him moving. So, yep, looks like they're doing everything good here. I'll close this. I don't need that. I guess I'll kind of go into the code, and you can skip this if you don't want to watch it. So you can see there's a lot going on here. So the manager agent, he's got the most stuff, the most ability to. So all of his tools are down here. So he can, as you see here, he can start an agent. So this gets sent as a parameter with the API request. So the fact that he knows he can call this comes from the tools that I sent him in the initial request, which is up here. Tools, so get manager tools, and then so all tools. So these are all the tools that they have access to, and then I just tagged them with who can have access, so that way I can just filter through them like this. So and then so these are injected addendums, which is, so this was crazy. I ran into an issue where I was telling the manager through my inject terminal thing over here to do something, and he came back and said no, 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 and then accused me of trying to socially engineer my way into the system, and really weird, incredibly weird. But it kept happening in different ways, so I had to handle it this way, which isn't my favorite because it can increase costs a lot. So Anthropic has this cool cache control, which basically whenever you tag an input with a cache control, everything prior to it up to the next cache control tag is cached on there. And so I think it's like 90% less you spend on cached input than you do on full input. That's why I'm okay with these massive prompts like this, because after the first time it's in there, and obviously I've been doing a lot of development changes, but the cache really makes a big difference. And I'm also not even using a super in-depth model here. So see, I'm using the Claude Haiku thinking, and I was using Sonnet, which was great. It was awesome, but it's just too expensive. It was like, it would run for 5 minutes and bone dry. So I met in the middle, and the agents either have, or the coding agents either have Haiku 4.5 or a GPT 5.4, I think, something like that. And then the manager agent gets the thinking model, which is the same model, just with the thinking attached to it as like basically a tool, I guess you could call it. This is just a fancy way of being able to make this enum cooler, I guess would be the way to put that. But, so yeah, here, so has tool use. This is just filtering his response and saying, do you have any tools left to use? Is there anything that you need to do? And if not, it checks all the conditions to determine whether or not it has reached a stop condition, or it should autonomously continue and enter maintenance mode, which is, if it doesn't have a task to keep it from going down rabbit holes, it enters maintenance mode, which is just test, find bugs, fix, repeat, and it just keeps doing that without, ideally without messing up the whole application, but after a while they probably would. And then I would like to show the history. So like I said, I can shut this down either through a shutdown command here, or just Control C and just shut off the entire CLI here, and it can pick right back up where it left off. So we'll actually do that. I'll request a shutdown here. Yes. So you can see here, yeah, so it's doing like a nice graceful shutdown, cleaning things up, any leftover files, saving its progress, and I want to show you the progress files here. So he's stopping all of his agents. He's probably mad at me. They got a timeline. It's the end of the workday. Go home, agent. He's still doing his thing, still stopping. He had a lot of agents going. Okay, so there, it fully stopped. So I'll show you their history. So in this file here, agents data, which is later on, I'm going to structure this differently. So am I still recording? Yeah, okay. So you can't see the files because they're dot prefix, but so these are all the history files. So I want to show you the manager history. So we're just going to do, oh, you know what, I should open that in a text editor. Sure, whatever, open it in VS Code. So this is all their history. This is just the manager's history. So this was another issue, is saving the history and then passing it back to the manager costs a lot of money. So what I did was this history, I'll see if we can see it at the end here. So see how this is all just like normal messages and responses down here, like tool result, assistant, tool result. But then up here you have summary blocks. So after a certain number of messages gets into the history, all those are sent to a summarizer agent, which then breaks it down, tags it with the time, summarizes it, pulls out important information, and converts those 50 messages into one small summary that gets saved as the history, because that's all the agent needs. It just needs to know what happened in the past. What has it done? Things like that. So you can see how many summary blocks we have, and I need to further improve this. Because right now it basically just grows and grows and grows. I'm thinking like every 25 or 30 summaries, I'm going to summarize all the summaries, or just drop them intermittently. We'll see. Also, pretty quick turnaround too. We'll open it up here. Just kind of kind of see. So you got a completion summary. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. So I guess we'll test it. All right. Alrighty. Scan repo. This is my test repo. And we'll let it, oh, okay. That was pretty quick. I believe this. That code was messy. I'm sure there's a lot of issues. So we'll look at the history. Unknown. So that was the report I just did. And it opened a legitimate report. Dang. That's pretty dang sick, not gonna lie. Critical. Yeah, it's a fake password. I'm pretty sure it says like my password or something. Or like my Wi-Fi. And we'll just try another random repository. We'll just do one of mine, I don't know. What is going on? We'll do this old one. Alrighty, we'll scan another one, see what happens. Scan repo. I think next up I'm going to make it do it all autonomously and choose repositories and everything. This, I believe, that repo is really small. See what open report does. Looks like nothing. It worked from the history. Why are those grouped together? They shouldn't be. That's fine. Oh, there we go. Yep, so that's the right repo. Pretty sweet. They did a good job. They really did. Yeah, so that's about it. Thanks for watching. It was a little bit long, but I just wanted to demo that. It's been pretty fun to build, and I'm probably going to package it into something else at some point. So we will see.